Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling entirely drained, but you can't quite pinpoint why? It is a physical weight, a heavy, lingering exhaustion that hits you before you even make it to the car. Psychologists call this a social hangover. You didn't have a screaming match. Voices might not have been raised at all, yet your energy is completely depleted, entirely out of proportion to the actual interaction. Society quickly steps in to offer a script for this: forgive, forget, and keep the peace. That pressure is especially heavy when the person draining your energy happens to share your last name. Because of that pressure, your brain starts doing acrobatics. You convince yourself they were just tired or under a lot of stress, inventing complex excuses to justify their behavior so you don't have to confront the reality of the relationship. And that is how the cycle continues. We rely on a baseless hope that the next interaction will miraculously change, rather than looking at the relationship through an objective lens. The problem is that we don't have a standardized dashboard for our personal lives. We lack a reliable, objective metric to measure whether a relationship is actually healthy. Without that metric, it is difficult to tell the difference between a temporary rough patch and a dynamic that is permanently corrosive. We internalize the confusion. We sit in silence, asking ourselves subjective questions. Am I overreacting? Am I being too sensitive? Escaping that paralyzing doubt requires a shift in perspective. We have to strip away the emotional bias and analyze the relationship with the cold, rigorous logic of a behavioral scientist. Instead of treating every phone call or family dinner as a chaotic emotional event, we can log those interactions as raw, trackable data points. The first variable to isolate is disrespect. We are looking for a consistent baseline pattern where your boundaries are routinely ignored. The second variable is the use of guilt. Watch for moments where obligation and shame are actively weaponized to manipulate your decisions. The third metric is energy flow. A healthy dynamic is reciprocal. We need to identify relationships that operate as a one-way street, where your emotional resources are continuously drained without return. Tracking these overarching variables is more accurate than analyzing any single, isolated fight. Over time, the daily noise cancels out, and the true behavioral trends emerge. This scatter plot shows what happens when we aggregate those interactions. The chaotic emotional events lock into place as clear, distinct clusters. The excuses are stripped away, leaving a map of measurable behavioral outputs. This timeline graph allows us to apply the core principle of our analysis: the concept of predictive behavior. Human beings do not operate on spontaneous anomalies. We run on established habits. When someone has a good day or offers a rare apology, it feels significant to us, but statistically, it is an outlier. The weight of a multi-year baseline pulls the trajectory back to the mean. In behavioral analysis, historical data is the strongest indicator of future actions. Expecting a different relational outcome while the input variables remain identical is a calculation that simply never balances. We can now look at that social hangover through a different lens. That deep physical exhaustion is the toll of trying to sustain a system that the data shows is failing. Every time you choose to hold on to hope in direct defiance of the historical evidence, you create an internal friction. That struggle between the reality you see and the outcome you want is what actually bankrupts your psychological resources. The exhaustion fades when you stop fighting the data. When we choose to trust what people consistently do over what we hope they might one day become, we stop being victims of our own optimism.